We are live.
Hey, I don't know how good my connection is going to be. So, worst case scenario, y'all get to listen to Richard all day.
We
Uh,
replaced we've replaced old new dude with a with old
oh yeah.
style special effects.
Now,
we have to
I was
we have to
I was at the. Is it still jumpy?
yeah, a little bit.
Can you hear me
It's a little
good
better.
though?
It's a little better. Oh yeah, it's a little
All right.
better than it was.
Well, I was packing at the other house, and then I brought foam swords that I was going to put behind this chair because I couldn't find my banners yet. I was going to have the swords sticking up, but I ran out of time. So I mean, they're here.
Stop action,
I
right?
got
Isn't that what's
plenty
called
of them.
stop action?
Yeah. So I am old new dude sometimes, and he is.
Richard York, Astro's True Son.
Yeah, we got another week or so before we actually get internet out here. So this is the only spot in the house, well, actually right outside the house, the back door, that I can get anything that's worth it. So if I pop out, just keep listening to Richard. If I get robotic, he'll let me know, and at least we'll get a live stream today, and that'll be good. We are Storm of Swords, Jamie 1. I think
Yeah,
it's
first.
really fitting that the very first live stream at the new property is a Jamie chapter. I, I
Well,
was
it's just
I
a
was
Jamie chapter.
packing
It's the
up
first Jamie
the
chapter.
the mecha construct figures that has Winterfell and all that stuff. I got a golden hand Jamie in there about that tall, and I meant to set it out, but I put it in the box, taped it up. So I was gonna go all out with Jamie today, but it didn't work out. But this is Crow's Crossing, so I made sure to wear a crow shirt out here. So shout out Chris the Crow. And take it away, Richard.
Please work, you Wi-Fi gods, waving from the wall. Corn, corn, twisted. What you beaches up? LOL. What's up? Oh, I see. Glad to be back. Cruising. Fuck yeah. All right. Storm 1, Jamie 1. Brienne successfully summons a meteor. An east wind blew through his tangled hair, as soft and fragrant as Circe's fingers. He could hear birds singing and feel the river moving beneath the boat as the sweep of the oars sent them toward the pale pink dawn. After so long in darkness, the world was so sweet that Jamie Lannister felt dizzy. I'm alive and drunk on sunlight. A laugh burst from his lips, sudden as a quail flushed from cover.
Hey,
Quiet, the wench broke.
I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
that first chapter there is the beginning voyage of Jamie's transformation.
Yeah, it's a dawn of a new day, basically, right?
Yep, that dizzy feeling might be some hidden fingers trying to put him on the path. Because you got to remember, he had opportunity at the end of this chapter to bash
Well,
Buran
yeah, that's
in the head, and he chooses not to. So I think
yeah,
this,
that's definitely implied to be, something that he didn't think he would be doing, basically, right? So,
yeah. So I
yeah.
think Jamie won a Storm of Swords is the beginning of his coming to be Jamie the Golden Hand arc. So I think it's a really strong and a very important chapter in his story.
Sounds good. Quiet, the wench grumbled, scowling. Scowl suited her broad, homely face better than a smile. Not that Jamie had ever seen her smiling. He amused himself by picturing her in one of Circe's silken gowns in place of her studded leather jerkin. As well dressed a cow in silk as this one. But the cow could row. Beneath her rough spun brown breeches were calves like cords of wood, and the long muscles of her arms stretched and tightened with each stroke of the oars. Even after rowing half the night, she showed no signs of tiring, which is more than could be said for his cousin Zergleos, laboring on the other oar. A big, strong peasant wench to look at her, yet she speaks like one highborn and wears longsword and dagger. Ah, but can she use them? Jamie meant to find out as soon as he rid himself of these fetters. So as Pip
Hey,
says,
quick thing,
you can tell what they are and where they are from by their accent, right?
right? And also, him picturing her in Cersei's gowns is
Mm-hmm.
also a nod to her replacing Cersei as the love
Right.
of his life.
Right, and even just here, even right here, he's kind of admiring her as even as
Yeah,
he's thinking that thinking less than flattering thoughts. He's clearly already admiring her.
yeah.
He wore iron manacles on his wrists and a matching pair about his ankles, joined by a length of heavy chain no more than a foot long. "You'd think my word as a Lannister was not good enough," he japed as they bound him. He'd been very drunk by then, thanks to Catelyn Stark. Of their escape from River Run, he recalled only bits and pieces. There'd been some trouble with the jailer, but the big wench had overcome him. After that, they'd climbed an endless stair around and around. His legs were weak as grass, and he'd stumbled twice or thrice, until a wench lent him an arm to lean on. At some point, he was bundled into a traveler's cloak and shoved into the bottom of a skiff. He remembered listening to Lady Catelyn command someone to raise the portcullis on the Watergate. She was sending Sir Cleos Frey back to King's Landing with new terms for the Queen, she declared in a tone that brooked no argument. "Mother Royne, I'm here.
Hey!
Next week, we channel our inner pirates on International Talk Like a Pirate Day." Arr!
Mother Roy, I apologize for the time between live streams.
Yep, it happens. He must have drifted off then. The wine had made him sleepy, and it felt good to stretch, a luxury his chains had not permitted him in the cell. Jaime had long ago learned to snatch sleep in the saddle during a march. And this was no harder. Tyrion's going to laugh himself sick when he hears how I slept through my own escape. He was awake now, though, and the fetters were irksome. "My lady," he called out, "if you'll strike off these chains, I'll spell you at those oars." She scowled again, her face all horse teeth and glowering suspicion. "You'll wear your chains, Kingslayer. You figure to row all the way to King's Landing, wench? You will call me Brienne, not wench. My name is Sir Jaime, not Kingslayer. Do you deny that you slew a king? No. Do you deny your sex? If so, unlace those breeches and show me." He gave her an innocent smile. "I'd ask you to open your bodice, but from the look of you, that wouldn't prove much." So, obviously these books are often about identity and reputation, and we and others attempt to rewrite history, which is really what reputation is, right? Us trying to write our own story, as Jaime is trying to do, and kind of finally realizes that he has the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
And, I think these books are about history's greatest identity crisis and the rewriting of history. See Triplet Targaryen's episode 1. Sir Cleos fretted. "Cousin, remember your courtesies." The Lannister blood runs thin in this one. Cleos was his Aunt Jenna's son by that dullard Emmon Frey, who had lived in terror of Lord Tywin Lannister since the day he wed his sister. When Lord Walder Frey had brought the twins into the war on the side of River Run, Sir Emmon had chosen his wife's allegiance over his father's. Castle Rock got the worst of that bargain, Jaime reflected. Sir Cleos looked like a weasel, fought like a goose, and had the courage of an especially brave ewe. Lady Stark had promised him release if he delivered her message to Tyrion, and Sir Cleos had solemnly vowed to do so. Phew! The dude has no face.
Can you hear me, though?
Yeah, we can hear you. They'd all done
you know what I look like.
They'd all done a deal of bowing back in that cell, Jaime most of all. That was Lady Catelyn's price for loosing him. She had laid the point of the big wench's sword against his heart and said, "Swear that you will never again take up arms against Stark nor Tully. Swear that you will compel your brother to honor his pledge to return my daughters safe and unharmed. Swear on your honor as a knight, on your honor as a Lannister, on your honor as a sworn brother of the Kingsguard. Swear it by your sister's life and your father's and your son's, by the old gods and the new, and I'll send you back to your sister. Refuse, and I will have your blood." He remembered the prick of the steel through his rags as she twisted the point of the sword. I wonder what the High Septon would have to say about the sanctity of oaths sworn while dead drunk, chained to a wall with a sword pressed to your chest. Not that Jaime was truly concerned about that fat fraud or the gods he claimed to serve. He remembered the pale Lady Catelyn kicked over in his cell. A strange woman to trust her girls to a man with shit for honor. Though she was trusting him as little as she dared, she's putting her hope in Tyrion, not in me. Perhaps she is not so stupid after all, he said aloud. His captor took it wrong. I am not stupid, nor deaf. He was gentle with her. Mocking this one would be so easy there would be no sport to it. I was speaking to myself and not of you. It's an easy habit to slip into in a cell. She frowned at him, pushing the oars forward, pulling them back, pushing them forward, saying nothing. As glib of tongue as she is fair of face. By your speech, I judge you nobly born. My father is someone of Tarth, by the grace of the gods, lord of Evenfall. Even that was given grudgingly. Tarth, Jamie said. A ghastly large rock in the narrow sea, as I recall. And Evenfall is sworn to Storm's End. How is it that you serve Rob of Winterfell? It is Lady Catelyn I serve, and she commanded me to deliver you safe to your brother Tyrion at King's Landing, not to bandy words with you. Be silent. I've had a bellyful of silence, woman. Talk with Sir Cleos, then. I have no words for monsters. Jamie hooted. Are there monsters hereabouts? Hiding beneath the water, perhaps? In that thick of willows? And me without my sword. So monsters beneath the water would symbolize krakens or possibly the sea dragon, and willows could symbolize, shoot, I forget how to pronounce it. I looked it up way back when I wrote this, but it's been a while. Hecate, something like that. Goddess of witchcraft. But probably more appropriate for Jamie and Brienne, willows represent new growth from cuttings. A man who would violate his own sister, murder his king, and fling an innocent child to his death deserves no other name. Innocent? The wretched boy was spying on us. All Jamie had wanted was an hour alone with Cersei. Their journey north had been one long torment, seeing her every day, unable to touch her, knowing that Robert stumbled drunkenly into her bed every night in that great creaking wheelhouse. Tyrion had done his best to keep him in a good humor, but it had not been enough. You will be courteous as concerns Cersei, wench, he warned her. It's probably just the squishers. Hecate. Hecate. Got it. My name is Brienne, she repeated, dogged as a hound. She is the hound, a truer knight than the true knights, and we're actually going to get this comparison between her and the hound here again, not just with the language and the choice of dogged and hound, but explicitly.
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, they're two sides of the same coin, the Hound and Brienne. Brienne
Right.
outwardly shows what a true knight should be, and the Hound gruffly puts up this exterior, but deep down, some of his actions and all that showed that he is a true knight also. But they're, I mean,
right.
They're,
He's somewhat, they are somewhat opposite, as you say, in that the Hound became a cynic and is kind of realizing that he could still try and be a true knight, right?
Yeah.
And still wants to be. And Brienne is gradually becoming a cynic, but trying to be a true knight.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're very similar. Lady Brienne, she looked so uncomfortable that Jamie sensed a weakness. Or would Sir Brienne be more to your taste? He laughed. No, I fear not. You can trick out a milk cow and Crupper. I looked up all these too. Anyway, Crupper, Krynet, and Chamfron, and barter all in silk, but that doesn't mean you can ride her into battle. Cousin Jamie, please, you ought not speak so roughly. Under his cloak, Sir Cleos wore a surcoat corded with the twin towers of House Frey and the golden lion of Lannister. We have far to go. We should not quarrel amongst ourselves. When I quarrel, I do it with a sword, cuz. I was speaking to the lady. Tell me, wench, are all the women in Tarth as homely as you? I pity the men, if so. Perhaps they do not know what real women look like, living on a dreary mountain in the sea. Tarth is beautiful, the wench grunted between strokes. The Sapphire Isle, it's called. Be quiet, monster, unless you mean to make me gag you. She's rude as well, isn't she, cuz? Jamie asked Sir Cleos. Though she has steel in her spine, I'll grant you. Not many men dare name me monster to my face, though behind my back they speak freely enough, I have no doubt. Sir Cleos coughed nervously. Lady Brienne had those lies from Catelyn Stark, no doubt. The Starks cannot hope to defeat you with swords, sir, so now they make war with poisoned words. They did defeat you with swords, you chinless cretin. Jamie smiled knowingly. Men will read all sorts of things into a knowing smile if you let them. Has Cousin Cleos truly swallowed this kettle of dung? Or is he striving to ingratiate himself? What do we have here? An honest mutton head or a lickspittle? Sir Cleos prattled blithely on. Any man who believed that a sworn brother of the Kingsguard would harm a child does not know the meaning of honor. Lickspittle. If truth be told, Jamie had come to rue heaving Brandon Stark out that window. Cersei had given him no end of grief afterward when the boy refused to die. He was 7, Jamie, she berated him. If he understood what he saw, we should have been able to frighten him into silence. I didn't think you'd never think, If the boy should wake and tell his father what he saw, he pulled her into his lap. If he wakes, we'll say he was dreaming. We'll call him a liar, and should worst come to worst, I'll kill Ned Stark. And then what do you imagine Robert will do? Let Robert do as he pleases. I'll go to war with him if I must. The war for Cersei's cunt, the singers will call it. Jaime, let go of me, she raged, struggling to rise. Instead, he had kissed her. For a moment, she resisted, but then her mouth opened under his. He remembered the taste of wine and cloves on her tongue. She gave a shudder. His hand went to her bodice and yanked, tearing the silks of her breast spilled free. For a time, the Stark boy had been forgotten. As Cersei remembered him afterward and hired this man Lady Catelyn spoke of to make sure the boy never woke, if she wanted him dead, she would have sent me. It's not like her to choose a catspaw who would make such a royal botch of the killing. By the same logic, Joffrey would send the Hound? Anyway. Tell that to Micah? Oh, yeah. Well, he's decided that he wants to be a true knight. Not that, yeah, he was definitely enjoying slaughtering people.
Yeah.
Downriver, the rising sun shimmered against the wind-whipped surface of the river. The south shore was red clay, smooth as any road. The north shore was wilder. High rocky bluffs rose 20 feet above them, crowned by stands of beech, oak, and chestnut. Jaime spied a watchtower on the heights ahead, growing taller with every stroke of the oars. Long before they were upon it, he knew that it stood abandoned, its weathered stones overgrown with climbing roses. Possibly symbolizing the abandonment of the watch, just because roses are somewhat associated with the north, but more importantly, it's a watchtower that's been abandoned, right?
Yeah.
When the wind shifted, Sir Cleos helped the big wench run up the sail, a stiff triangle of striped red and blue canvas. Tully colors, sure to cause them grief if they encountered any Lannister forces on the river, was the only sail they had. Brienne took the rudder. Jaime threw out the lee board, his chains rattling as he moved. After that, they made better speed with wind and current, both favoring their flight. We could save a deal of traveling if you delivered me to my father instead of my brother, he pointed out. Lady Catelyn's daughters are in King's Landing. I will return to the girls or not at all. Jaime turned to Sir Cleos. Cousin, lend me your knife. No, the woman tensed. I will not have you armed. Her voice was as unyielding as stone. She fears me, even in irons. Cleos, it seems I must ask you to shave me. Leave the beard, but take the hair off my head. You'd be shaved bald? Asked Cleos Frey. The realm knows Jaime Lannister as a beardless knight with long golden hair. A bald man with a filthy yellow beard may pass unnoticed. I'd sooner not be recognized while I'm in irons. The dagger was not as sharp as it might have been. Cleos hacked away manfully, sawing and ripping his way through the mats and tossing the hair over the side. The golden curls floated on the surface of the water, gradually falling astern. As the tangles vanished, a louse went crawling down his neck. Jaime caught it and crushed it against his thumbnail. Sir Cleos picked others from his scalp and flicked them into the water. Jaime doused his head and made Sir Cleos wet the blade before he let him scrape away the last inch of yellow stubble. When that was done, they trimmed back his beard as well. The reflection in the water was a man he did not know. Not only was he bald, but he looked as though he had aged 5 years in that dungeon. His face was thinner, with hollows under his eyes and lines he did not remember. I don't look as much like Cersei this way. She'll hate that.
It's also a nod to him becoming a different person.
Yeah. And I think it was Girls Gone Canon that says Jaime is Narcissus, the god who falls in love with his own reflection, and Cersei is narcissism personified. Of course, Jaime is also Oedipus. See, Travel Stargates episode 5. Anyway, by midday,
you be careful what you say about Jaime now.
Oh, he's Oedipus. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I know.
By midday, Sir Cleos had fallen asleep. His snore sounded like ducks mating. Jaime stretched out to watch the world flow past. After the dark cell, every rock and tree was a wonder. Narcissus, yes, yep. She says. The thing is, I just remembered ducks mating. That's literally a term that's used in Remo Williams. Have you ever seen the movie Remo Williams?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is the line is in and out like a duck mating? That's what they tell him. Anyway.
I thought
A few, a
that was
few
actually a
one.
pretty good movie.
Oh yeah, I like that. A few one-room shacks came and went, perched on tall poles that made them look like cranes. Of the folk who lived there, they saw no sign. Birds flew overhead or cried out from the trees along the shore, and Jimmy glimpsed silvery fish knifing through the water. Tully trout. There's a bad omen, he thought, until he saw worse. One of the floating logs they passed turned out to be a dead man, bloodless and swollen. His cloak was tangled in the roots of a fallen tree, its color unmistakably Lannister crimson. He wondered if the corpses had been someone he knew.
Hey, the birds
Of course.
are
Yeah,
somebody watching the travels of this.
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. The forks of the Trident were the easiest way to move goods or men across the riverlands. In times of peace, they would have encountered fisherfolk in their skiffs, grain barges being poled downstream, merchants selling needles and bolts of cloth from floating shops, perhaps even a gaily painted mummer's boat with quilted sails of half a hundred colors making its way upriver from village to village and castle to castle. R.I.P. Fred Ward. Remo Williams.
Yeah.
But the war had taken its toll. They sailed past villages, but saw no villagers. An empty net, slashed and torn and hanging from some trees, was the only sign of fisherfolk. A young girl watering her horse rode off as soon as she glimpsed their sail. Later, they passed a dozen peasants digging in a field beneath the shell of a bird tower house. The men gazed at them with dull eyes and went back to their labors once they decided the skiff was no threat. The Red Fork was wide and slow, a meandering river of loops and bends dotted with tiny wooded islets and frequently choked by sandbars and snags that lurked just below the water's surface. Brienne seemed to have a keen eye for the dangers, though, and always seemed to find the channel. When Jamie complimented her on her knowledge of the river, she looked at him suspiciously and said, "I do not know the river. Tarth is an island. I learned to manage oars and sail before I ever sat a horse." Ducks are actually rapists. I've seen female ducks attempting to escape. Yeah, apparently so are dolphins, which is a bit disappointing considering they're maybe they might be the smartest creatures, including humans, in some ways.
The Jamie going out of his way to give her a compliment is actually against his original nature. So, like I said, this is still
Well,
more of the Jamie arc in its early stages.
well, he also he told us that that she wasn't worth arguing with, and then he argued with her.
Yeah.
No, and of course I still like how in his the last time we saw Jamie, he announced that there are no men like me, and then he immediately said that Brandon Stark was like me, and then later on he's gonna be like, Loras is exactly like me. And he's,
Yeah.
he's kind of he's not exactly consistent.
What was
Smarter
Lizzie
than
say?
humans is a low bar, says Lizzie. Smarter than humans
It's
is a low
true.
bar. Sir Cleo sat up and rubbed at his eyes. Gods, my arms are sore. I hope the wind lasts. He sniffed at it. I smell rain. Jamie would welcome a good rain. The dungeons of Riverrun were not the cleanest place in the Seven Kingdoms. By now he must smell like an overripe cheese. Cleo squinted down the river. Smoke. A thin gray finger crooked them on. It was rising from the south bank several miles on, twisting and curling. Below, Jamie made out the smoldering remains of a large building and a live oak full of dead women. Crows had scarcely started on their corpses. The thin ropes cut deeply into the soft flesh of their throats. When the wind blew, they twisted and swayed. This was not chivalrously done, said Brienne when they were close enough to see it clearly. No true knight would condone such wanton butchery. True knights see worse every time they ride to war, wench, said Jamie, and do worse, yes. Insert the story of the girl in my public speaking class who did a 15-minute presentation on how dolphins can't be rapists. It's a legal term that only applies to humans.
Who said
Point
that?
proven. What? Lady Thistle says that there was a girl in her public speaking class who did a 15-minute presentation on how dolphins can't be rapists because it's a legal term and it only applies to humans. Okay.
Tell that to
So,
the female dolphin.
yeah, and apparently the ducks. Brienne turned the rudder toward the shore. I'll leave no innocents to be food for crows. A heartless wench. Crows need to eat as well. Stay to the river and leave the dead alone, woman. They landed upstream of where the great oak leaned out over the water. As Brienne lowered the sail, Jamie climbed out, clumsy in his chains. The red fork filled his boots and soaked through the ragged breeches. Laughing, he dropped to his knees, plunged his head under the water, and came up drenched and dripping. His hands were caked with dirt, and when he rubbed them clean in the current, they seemed thinner and paler than he remembered. His legs were stiff as well, and unsteady when he put his weight upon them. I was too bloody long in Hoster Tully's dungeon. That's why I don't mind dolphin in my tuna. Okay. Brienne and Cleos dragged the skiff onto the bank. The corpses hung above their heads, ripening in death like foul fruit. One of us will need to cut them down, the wench said. I'll climb. Jamie waited ashore, clanking. Just get these chains off. The wench was staring up at one of the dead women. Jamie shuffled closer with small stutter steps, the only kind the foot-long chain permitted. When he saw the crude sign hung about the neck of the highest corpse, he smiled. They lay with lions, he read. Oh, yes, woman, this was most unchivalrously done, but by your side, not mine. I wonder who they were, these women. Tavern wenches, said Sir Cleos Frey. This was an inn. I remember it now. Some men of my escort spent the night here when we were last returned to River Run. Nothing remained of the building but the stone foundation, a tangle of collapsed beams, charred black. Smoke still rose from the ashes. Jamie left brothels and whores to his brother Tyrion. Cersei was the only woman he had ever wanted. The girls pleasured some of my lord father's soldiers, it would seem. Perhaps served them food and drink. That's how they earned their traitors' collars, with a kiss and a cup of ale. He glanced up and down the river to make certain they were quite alone. This is Bracken land. Lord Janos might have ordered them killed. My father burned his castle. I fear he loves us not. It might be Mark Piper's work, said Sir Cleos, or that wisp of the wood, Beric Dondarrion, though I had heard he kills only soldiers. Perhaps the band of Roose Bolton's Northmen? Bolton was defeated by my father in the Green Fork. But not broken, said Sir Cleos. He came south again when Lord Tywin marched against the fords. The word at River Run was that he'd taken Harrenhal from Sir Amory Lorch. Jamie liked the sound of that, not at all. Brienne, he said, granting her the courtesy of the name and the hopes that she might listen. If Lord Bolton holds Harrenhal, both the Trident and the King's Road are likely watched. My daughter volunteered at a sexual information center. He means no, even for dolphins. No means no, even for dolphins and ducks. Now, no whores for Jamie, just Cersei. 3 chapters from now, Cersei is queen of the whores.
Yep.
He thought he saw a touch of uncertainty in her big blue eyes. You are under my protection. They need to kill me. I shouldn't think that would trouble them. I'm as good a fighter as you, she said defensively. I was one of King Renly's chosen 7. With his own hands, he cloaked me with the striped silk of the Rainbow Guard. The Rainbow Guard? You and 6 other girls, was it? A singer once said that all maids are fair in silk, but he never met you, did he? The woman turned red. We have graves to dig. She went to climb the tree. The lower limbs of the oak were big enough for her to stand upon once she'd gotten up the trunk. She walked amongst the leaves, dagger in hand, cutting down the corpses. Flies swarmed around the bodies as they fell, and the stench grew worse with each one that she dropped. This is a deal of trouble to take for whores, Sir Cleos complained. What are we supposed to dig with? We have no spades, and I will not use my sword. Bran gave a shout. She jumped down rather than climbing. To the boat! Be quick! There's a sail!
Hey, if they were on the water, they wouldn't have seen the sail as quickly as they did. So her actually stopping to bury the dead gave them the heads up that there was a sail coming.
Yeah, it probably means they get caught slightly faster, but they're aware of it for longer.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. And it also changes the timing of when they get so close that she, where they're at and when she's able to see the boulder and so forth.
Exactly.
They made what haste they could, though Jaime could hardly run and had to be pulled back up into the skiff by his cousin. Brienne shoved off with an oar and raised sail hurriedly. Sir Cleos, I'll need you to row as well. He did as she bid. The skiff began to cut the water a bit faster. Current, wind, and oars all worked for them. Jaime sat chained, peering upriver. Only the top of the other sail was visible. With the way the Red Fork looped, it looked to be across the fields, moving north behind a screen of trees while they moved south, but he knew that was deceptive. He lifted both hands to shade his eyes. Mud red and watery blue, he announced. So this is interesting because it means it's a ship sailing through the forest, right?
Right.
It's moving north behind a screen of trees. So anyway, it's just an interesting symbolism of a ship flying through the trees.
Well, also the journey through the trees. I mean, the different directions it might it might hint at the journey through the rearwood net,
Right.
and how Bran is going to have to sail it, and sometimes he might not know the direction that he's going.
So from this channel, we call it the Weirwood Web.
Oh, yes, right, rearwood web. www.
Trust the symbolism for. Bran's big mouth worked soundlessly, giving her the look of a cow chewing its cud. Faster, sir. The inn soon vanished behind them, and they lost sight of the top of the sail as well, but that meant nothing. Once the pursuers swung around the loop, they would become visible again. We can hope the noble Tullys will stop to bury the dead whores, I suppose. The prospect of returning to his cell did not appeal to Jaime. Tyrion could think of something clever now, but all that occurs to me is to go at them with a sword. For the good part, that's all right. You got Bran here. For the good part of it, for the good part of an hour, they played peek and seek with the pursuers, sweeping around bends and between the small wooded aisles. Just when they were starting to hope that somehow they might have left behind the pursuit, the distant sail became visible again. So Cleos paused in his stroke. The others take them, he wiped sweat from his brow. Row, Brienne said. That was a river galley coming after us, Jaime announced after he'd watched for a while. With every stroke, it seemed to grow a little larger. 9 oars on each side, which means 18 men, more if they crowded on fighters as well as rowers. And larger sails than ours, we cannot outrun her. So Cleos froze his oars. 18, you said? 6 for each of us. I'd want 8, but these bracelets hinder me somewhat. Jaime held up his wrists. Unless the Lady Brienne would be so kind as to unshackle me. She ignored him, putting all her effort into her stroke. We had half a night's start on them, Jaime said. They've been rowing since dawn, resting 2 oars at a time. They'll be exhausted. Just now, the sight of our sails given them a burst of strength, but that will not last. We ought to be able to kill a good many of them. So Cleos gaped. But there are 18.
I think it's a big shout out to Jaime's brain on figuring out. Okay, they rested too. I mean, he's working out in his head how they caught them, what shape they'll be in. I mean,
right.
He's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. I don't know the people on the chat will go boo like they did at book club, but I mean, Jaime's actually a pretty smart guy.
Maybe not quite as smart as Brienne, but okay.
Yeah.
Although he does kind of figure out what she's doing, I think, is in the process. But she figures it out first, obviously. Yeah. It's a lot easier to figure it out when you can see what she's up to. But there are 18 at the least. More likely 20 or 25. His cousin groaned. We can't hope to defeat 18. Did I say we could? The best we can hope for is to die with swords in our hands. He was perfectly sincere. Jaime Lannister had never been afraid of death. We only boo you when you can hear us. It's more effective.
Well, when I say it, I can actually hear the boos out of the corner. Oh, speaking of hearing something, I'm driving down the road in the Ford. I got it packed, passenger seat, back seats laid down. It's wall to wall stuff. And one of the boxes is one of the boxes my son has toys in. And I'm sitting at a stoplight and I hear people talking. There's no car behind me. The other cars are way on the other side of the light. I'm like, who the hell's talking to me? I looked at the phone. Phone was off. There was toys in that box that were, when you hit a bump, would activate. It was so much. It scared the crap out of me. I thought a ghost was in my damn car.
And Pod says one can be a smart douche.
Yep.
Anyway. Brienne broke off rowing. Sweat had stuck strands of her flax-colored hair to her forehead, and her grimace made her look homelier than ever. You are under my protection, she said, her voice so thick with anger that it was almost a growl. He had to laugh at such fierceness. She's the hound with teats, he thought, or would be if she had any teats to speak of. Then protect me, wench, or free me to protect myself. The galley was skimming downriver, a great wooden dragonfly. The water around her was churned white by the furious action of her oars. She was gaining visibly, the men on her deck crowding forward as she came on. Metal glinted in their hands, and Jaime could see bows as well. Archers. He hated archers. At the prow of the onrushing galley stood a stocky man with a bald head, bushy gray eyebrows, and brawny arms. Over his mail he wore a soiled white surcoat with a weeping willow embroidered in pale green, but his cloak was fastened with a silver trout. Riverrun's captain of guards. In his day, Sir Robin Ryger had been a notably tenacious fighter, but his day was done. He was of an age with Hoster Tully and had grown old with his lord. So we got the willow symbolism again here.
Yeah.
And as I said, that willows are well known for being one of the easiest cuttings to transplant.
Uh-huh.
When the boats were 50 yards apart, Jamie cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted back over the water, "Come to wish me Godspeed, Sir Robin." "Come to take you back, Kingslayer," Sir Robin Ryger bellowed. "How is it that you've lost your golden hair?" "I hope to blind my enemies with the sheen off my head. It's worked well enough for you." Sir Robin was unamused. The distance between skiff and galley had shrunk to 40 yards. "Throw your oars and your weapons into the river, and no one need be harmed." Sir Cleos twisted around. "Jamie, tell him we were freed by Lady Catelyn in exchange of captives. Lawful." Jamie told him for all the good it did. "Catelyn Stark does not rule in river runs," Sir Robin shouted back. 4 archers crowded into position on either side of him, 2 standing and 2 kneeling. "Cast your swords in the water." "I have no sword," he returned. "But if I did, I'd stick it through your belly and hack the balls off those 4 cravens." A flight of arrows answered him. 1 thudded into the mast, 2 pierced the sail, and the 4th missed Jamie by a foot. Another of the Red Fork's broad loops loomed before them. Bran angled the skiff across the bend. The yards swung as they turned, their sail cracking as it filled with wind. Ahead, a large island sat in midstream. The main channel flowed right. To the left, a cutoff ran between the island and the high bluffs of the north shore. Bran moved the tiller and the skiff sheered left, sail rippling. Jamie watched her eyes. Pretty eyes, he thought, and calm. He knew how to read a man's eyes. He knew what fear looked like. She is determined, not desperate. So this is,
Another thing. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say this has got to be the first time that he's referred to as pretty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also talking about the birds watching and things happening, her choosing to cut down the bodies gave him a heads up on the sail and everything. Also, another thing is the wind. They had no wind all night long, and then the wind changed, and all of that put them where she needed to be
Right.
to save Jamie to get away. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes to make this happen.
Yeah, which other people would read through these books and think that's it's terrible that there's all these coincidences and things that need to happen, and we're looking at them like man, Bran and the old gods really had to arrange things for this to work.
Yeah. Well, the only thing is the wind. The only reference we get in the story of somebody doing something to command the wind or to get the wind to do something is Melisandre and the Red God. So it's up in the air which player is moving the pieces right now.
Is it the only time, or does it also happen with Makora or something? I don't know.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain on that. Mother Royan literally had a talking toy, Chatty Cathy. Got my grandson a rock and roll Elmo in English and Spanish.
There you go.
Yeah. 30 yards behind, the galley was entering the bend. "Sir Cleos, take the tiller," the wench commanded. "Kingslayer, take an oar and keep us off the rocks." "As my lady commands." An oar was not a sword, but the blade could break a man's face if well swung. The shaft could be used to parry. So Cleos shoved the oar into Jamie's hand and scrambled aft. They crossed the head of the island and turned sharply down the cutoff, sending a wash of water against the face of the bluff as the boat tilted. The island was densely wooded, a tangle of willows, oaks, and tall pines that cast deep shadows across the rushing water, hiding snags in the rotted trunks of drowned trees. To the left, the bluff rose sheer and rocky, and at its foot the river foamed whitely around broken boulders and tumbles of rock fallen from the cliff face. They passed from sunlight into shadow, hidden from the galley's view between the green walls of the trees and the stony gray-brown bluff. A few moments' respite from the arrows, Jamie thought, pushing them off a half-submerged boulder. The skiff rocked.
Getting back to Melisandre and the wind and everything, she says the shadow is an agent of the light, and they're passing from sunlight into shadow, which might hint at who's playing here.
Could be. Mother Royan says the children of the forest control wind and water, which of course could be the old gods. So I do like how she arranged that they couldn't see her when she jumps off the boat, right?
Yeah.
The skiff rocked, heard a soft splash, and when he glanced around, Brienne was gone. A moment later, he spied her again, pulling herself from the water at the base of the bluff. She waded through a shallow pool, scrambled over some rocks, and began to climb. So Cleos goggled, mouth open. Fool, thought Jamie. Ignore the wench, he snapped at his cousin. Steer! They could see the sail moving behind the trees. I mean, fool thought Jamie, right away he realizes we cannot be looking at her, right?
Right. He's got to do his job.
Right. Well, and if you're looking at her, you give away the game.
Right.
They could see the sail moving behind the trees. The river galley came into full view at the top of the cutoff, 25 yards behind. Her bow swung hard as she came around, and a half dozen arrows took. We've got archers and we got boats, so it took me a second to realize that I need to say bow and not bow there. Anyway, her bow swung hard as she came around, and a half dozen arrows took flight, but all went well wide. The motion of the two boats was giving the archers difficulty, but Jamie knew they'd soon enough learn to compensate. Brienne was halfway up the cliff face, pulling herself from handhold to handhold. Ryger's sure to see her, and once he does, he'll have those bowmen bring her down. Jamie decided to see if the old man's pride would make him stupid. Sir Robin, he shouted, hear me for a moment. Sir Robin raised a hand, and his archers lowered their bows. Say what you will, Kingslayer, but say it quickly. The skiff swung through a litter of broken stones as Jamie called out, I know a better way to settle this. Single combat, you and I. I was not born this morning, Lannister. No, but you're like to die this afternoon. Jamie raised his hands so the other could see the manacles. I'll fight you in chains. What could you fear? Not you, sir. If the choice were mine, I'd like nothing better. But I'm commanded to bring you back alive, if possible. Bowman, he signaled them up. Notch. Draw. Loop. The range was less than 20 yards. The archers could scarcely have missed, but as they pulled on their longbows, a rain of pebbles cascaded down around them. Small stones rattled on their deck, bounced off their helms, made splashes on both sides of the bow. Those who had wits enough to understand raised their eyes just as a boulder the size of a cow attached itself from the top of the bluff. Sir Robin shouted in dismay. The stone tumbled through the air, struck the face of the cliff, cracked in two, and smashed down on them. The larger piece snapped the mast, tore through the sail, sent two of the archers flying into the river, and crushed the leg of a rower as he bent over his oar. The rapidity with which the galley began to fill with water suggested that the smaller fragment had punched right through her hull. The oarsmen's screams echoed off the bluff while the archers flailed wildly in the current. From the way they were splashing, neither man could swim. Jamie laughed. So, doesn't Euron maybe make some wind to propel the Iron Fleet? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is there may have been something going on with the Ironborn.
Are you talking about when the storm that separated them? Victorian on the.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Euron and it's the Iron Fleet, it would have to be right at the beginning. So I don't know.
I can't remember.
Yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes open. So, Elemental would probably say that this is somehow illustrating what's supposed to happen with the cracking of the moon or something. But it does make me wonder if I have always kind of liked his theory that the Hammer of the Waters was a single event that hit both the neck and the arm.
Yeah.
And Makoro, in my opinion.
Yeah, true.
So, Pod says I'll find it.
Hey, Lady Thistle, are you saying that Makoro caused the storm that sunk the ship to get where he needed to be?
Yeah, we'll
catch you with your types.
Yeah. Anyway, I do like the idea that it could be somewhat symbolic of the idea that the neck and the arm are paired. That maybe it was a single event, and that that's whatever. I am saying that, she says, and then a meteor maybe was called down and broke into two and hit them both essentially.
Yeah. I agree with you, Lady Thistle.
By the time they emerged from the cutoff, the galley was foundering amongst pools, eddies, and snags, and Jamie Lannister decided that the gods were good. Sir Robin and his thrice damned archers would have a long, wet walk back to River Run. He was rid of the big, homely wench as well. I could not have planned it better myself. Once I'm free of these irons. Sir Cleos raised a shout. When Jamie looked up, Brienne was lumbering along the cliff top well ahead of them, having cut across a finger of land while they were following the bend in the river. She threw herself off the rock and looked almost graceful as she folded into a dive. It would have been ungracious to hope that she would smash her head on a stone. Sir Cleos turned the skiff toward her. Thankfully, Jamie still had his oar. One good swing when she comes past, but I'll be free of her. Instead, he found himself stretching the oar out over the water.
Yes.
Hidden fingers, the divine intervention, Brienne quantum leaping, call it what you will.
Yep.
Brienne grabbed hold and Jamie pulled her in. As he helped her into the skiff, water ran from her hair and dripped from her sodden clothing to pool on the deck. She's even uglier wet. Who would have thought it possible? You're a bloody stupid wench, he told her. We could have sailed on without you. I suppose you expect me to thank you? I want none of your thanks, Kingslayer. I swore an oath to bring you safe to King's Landing. And you actually mean to keep it? Jaime gave her his brightest smile. Now there's a wonder. Up next, Storm 2, Catlin 1, Tansy. Leave me to my to father and my grief. I have no more to say to you. Go, go.
Yeah, yeah. I love this chapter. Like I said, I think it is the beginning point, even though it's like the beginning point of the book. But
Lizzie says, Brantham leaping.
there you go. Yeah, that's the new phrase from now on. Okay, no more quantum. But yeah, I mean, it's the first chapter of the book, even though we have prologue. It's setting the tone for what is ahead for Jaime. It sets the tone of even more of how Brienne is a true knight, what a true knight should be, how a true knight should act. Um, and I think some of that is rubbing off on Jaime. It's having an effect on him. He gives her a compliments out of the blue. He talks about how pretty her eyes are. He mockingly pictures her in Cersei's clothes, which I think hints to her eventually becoming uh, his love instead of Cersei. I mean, it's a really
Right.
good chapter. There's a lot in there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean it's the first real Jaime and Brienne chapter, and it's definitely
Yeah. It's
good.
probably like my second or third favorite Brienne and Jaime chapter. Of course, my favorite is the bath where he does the whole thing about the why he killed the king, how he killed the king, all that kind of stuff. But I mean this is a really good chapter.
And like so many of these books, once you actually know about things like triplet Targaryens and Asterys the Dione and so forth, and see
Yeah.
you know see yada yada yada. Anyway, then there's so much more irony there, right? That the whole by what right does the wolf judge the lion? Right.
Yeah.
The whole concept is supposed to be that the Night's Watch vows and the Kingsguard vows are meant to represent the concept of the marriage vow,
Yeah.
right? And so he's forsaken his marriage vow to stop the Mad King, just as Ned forsakes his marriage vow to stop the Mad King.
Yeah.
It's in the world in the WoW sample chapters that you're on moving with speed. Okay,
Well, thank you,
and
Bud.
it's just is that now. There's actually you can actually hear George R. R. Martin read what is probably the most intense chapter in all of the Song of Ice and Fire, which is the Forsaken. Right, you've avoided them. I understand, but
Yeah. As soon as I hear a date from George R. R. Martin that the
yeah,
book is coming out,
yeah. So
I'll read it.
it turns out that the date, the published date, was actually announced well before his blog post about killing Kong. So his blog post about killing Kong was done exactly 11 weeks before the release date, but that release date had already been set like 2 months earlier. Anyway, the point is they'll actually be to the point where they're just sort of refining it, and they'll announce it, assuming it follows the same pattern, right?
Right.
They'll announce an actual publish date first, and there'll still be a little bit of back and forth and some final polishing going on at that point, and then it was like I said, it was like 11 weeks before that publish date when he made his blog post that said it was done.
Now
or implied it was done.
The artist that did the cover, is that just out of his own pocket type thing, or was he commissioned to do the Winds of Winter cover?
No, nobody thinks. I've seen nobody who's confirmed that that's official. It may just be completely unofficial.
Right.
In fact, it's probably Preston would argue that it has to be unofficial. Liz said 5 because I was referring to my yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Pod says I'll do more homework. That's off the top of my head. So he's trying to find that. He's trying to find that, but that one might be in. That one might be in. The only some of the sample chapters are in a Search of Ice and Fire. If you click Winds of Winter, so I don't know if that one's one of them or not. It should be pretty obvious to tell though if you search for some generic term like Euron or something. Time for medication midday nap. While visiting grandson, I napped when he did. Yep, sounds good. All
Good
right.
job.
Well, uh,
I apologize that you have not been able to see my gorgeous hat and my gorgeous back door for a longer period. Uh, Next time, if I'm stuck out here, I will try to find the Lannister banner that Lizzie bought me. She
okay.
sent me 3 of them. But I'll put that one behind me out of respect for Lizzie because I appreciated the gift very, very much. I'm glad we were able to do this, um, even without me being on camera. I mean, I'm not that conceited. It doesn't matter as long as you can hear me. And I will get with Richard probably later today to see when we can do the next one because this is the last week of moving stuff. So my time is with the also I got an appointment Wednesday for um uh that that I can't do Wednesday because my son has an eye appointment in Charlotte, which is an hour and a half away. So, but I'll get with Richard, find out when we can do this again. Hopefully, I can get something to boost the signal out here, or get the camera even higher up. Because right now I'm about 4 feet off the ground, trying to get the phone as high up to get the signal as possible. But I'll see if I can get it higher, and we'll go from there. I appreciate everybody
Well,
joining us. Sorry
I
about
had I
the
had
the
I had a real quick. I had a interesting interpretation I heard from someone in the. I have red Lannister sneakers, my dancing shoes. The or maybe it's my dancing shows. Anyway, um, probably shoes.
yeah.
The I heard an interesting comment. I think it was a comment on Preston that where somebody said maybe what's going on with all these chapters, thinking about Bran and his stories, if you will.
Uh,
Maybe each one of these is really Bran peeking in on people's heads and looking at them as, looking in on them from the future.
what if it? I
And
mean, if
every
it's
single
slightly
chapter.
if it's slightly future brand that
Uh-huh.
hasn't fully connected with the Weirwood web. What if it's a younger brand but slightly older than he is now, which would probably be during the time of the books? If he's peeking in on other people, he's actually gaining knowledge
Right,
and
right. But
seeing.
I just thought it was
And,
an interesting interpretation that what's
yeah,
actually going on is each individual chapter is a story that Brand is peeking in on and looking at.
yeah. I've heard that before too. I can't remember where.
Yeah,
That was
I
a
thought,
while back.
yeah, it doesn't really do anything for the story, but it's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would give Bran, I mean, a big nod to how powerful he's going to become.
Well,
Um,
and there is this whole concept that the stories are, old Nan specifically when we're kind of learning about these people living 1,000 years in seven, and we're she mentions that that even she will die someday, and that the stories are older than her, even older than Bran, right? And
right.
right, so she really implies that he's almost as timeless as the stories, and more timeless than she is, and older than she is, and if Grant had been more careful about peaking, we'd be in a much different storyline. Per Vaughn, little man. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
something
It's
funny that the people that chat with me on my drives and on book club will remember. I have no camera, and this whole time I have been nodding my head up and down, agreeing with you, or agreeing with like Lady Thistle or Lizzie. I'm sitting there just nodding my head like an idiot, and y'all can't see me, but that's okay.
anyway, we can go and wrap up. Sorry, just wanted
Okay,
to.
yeah, no problem. I actually like that theory a lot. I think that we're going to see a really strong brand by the end of this book,
Well, it
and
would also explain why Dan and Dave are so focused on this concept of stories and so forth, right? And
yeah.
anyway,
Okay. I will post on Discord, and for those that aren't on the Discord, even though I haven't been on Twitter's for before it turned into X, I will give a heads up on when the next live stream is. And I appreciate everybody joining us. I know this is a little different. For those of y'all that think I look old as dirt, you got a treat today. You didn't have to look at me. But we will see each other very soon. Now that I know that this will work, even though it's not a perfect live stream, it's still a live stream, and we got to talk about it. So I appreciate all y'all. Thank you very much. And as always, Richard, there would not be a live stream without you. You are the heart and soul of this live stream, and I appreciate you every time we jump on here, man. You do not know. I'm not one of those to get in contact with people out of the blue, unless it's on Discord every now and then. But I really respect your your reading, your demeanor, how you come across on the videos, your knowledge. I put you and
Thank you,
Lady
sir.
Thistle and Pod, Lizzie. I put y'all. I mean, I have stupid little theories here and there. I can't remember Jack, but I mean, if I'm here, oh, y'all can't see. Y'all are about 2 feet. Y'all about 2 feet above my head. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep, I did it. I put the
I
hands
gotta
up and
fix it. I
everything.
gotta fix it. You doing
That's okay. You'll be thinking about it later today, laughing. Well, if my knowledge is at my neck, I think y'all guys' knowledge is about 2 feet above my head. So I appreciate all of y'all very, very much. And hopefully, I'll get internet and we can get back to normal live streams. But until then, we'll do what we can do so we can at least get together and talk. And I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Have a good day. Have a good day, Richard. Thank you again.
Nice. You too.
Bye.
Bye.